Thank you very much for inviting me, and let me thank Reverend Barbara and all of you for doing what has to be done. You know, today and in the last 45 years, we heard a whole lot of talk and a whole lot of speeches and a whole lot of party platforms. But you know what goes on? Today, the average worker in America is making exactly the same wages that he or she made 45 years ago. Today in America, you got 3 people owning more wealth than the bottom half of America. Today in America, we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a right. Today in America, we have hundreds of thousands of bright young people who cannot afford to go to college, and millions of others who are leaving school deeply in debt. So after all of the speeches of 45 years, where we are today is with more income and wealth inequality than at any time since the 1920s, and in the midst of all of that disparity, there is a racial disparity, which means that the African American and Latino families are doing far worse than white families. So how do we change all of that other than giving speeches? Well, you are the answer. In my view, there will never be any real change in this country unless there is a political revolution. And that means that millions of people have got to stand up and fight and take on the corporate interests, the billionaire class, the 1%, and tell them that in this country, our economy and our government belong to all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. So the way we bring about change is when all of us stand together and fight. And if we don't do that, all the legislation in the world and all the speeches in the world will not accomplish that goal. So let us go forward together with a new vision that transforms this country into a government and an economy that works for all of us, not just the few. Thank you.
All right. You may take a seat here, Senator.
Thank you so much.
And the first question is going to come from Bishop William Barber.
Good to see you, Senator. So I've been talking a lot today and over this campaign, Senator Sanders, about just that. We got to do the rhetoric, but the rhetoric has got to lead to organizing, got to lead to mobilizing, it's got to lead to voter registration. You've done that as well. We take this message where we connect systemic racism, and by that we don't mean cultural racism, we're talking about policy racism, like voter suppression, mass incarceration, resegregation, high poverty schools, attack on immigrants, attack on our native people. And then we connect that to systemic poverty, and we point out that concentration-wise, there are more people of color in concentrated poverty, but in raw numbers, there are more white people, 40 million more. Then we connect that to ecological devastation. We connect that to militarism and the war economy that's undermining in so many ways our ability to strive. And then we connect it to this false moral narrative because it's made its way all up the way in the White House, where these religious extremists basically say if you're against a woman's right to choose, against gay people, for guns, for taxes, and prayer in the school, that somehow that is a great moral a platform which is contrary to so much. I say all that to say, we talk like that when we go to Eastern Kentucky. Same message. We talk like that when we go to Mitchell County, North Carolina, that's 99% white and 89% Republican. And people said we couldn't organize up there, and we proved them wrong. But we took just what I said, the same message, the truth about racism and the intersectional. And we say to people in counties like that, you want living wages? Yes. You want health care? Yes. You want more money for education, protect teachers? Yes. said, now, did you know that the people in your state and your Congress that are voting against these things primarily get their power because of racialized voter suppression and gerrymandering in the South? And that's how they get power. The question I have for you, and we've asked all the candidates this, is how will your candidacy, your presidency, and the way you present issues go south in communities that have been deliberately divided? Because if they ever figure out that if you white and and can't pay your light bill, and you black and can't pay your light bill, we all black in the dark. So how will your campaign go to those places and fuse and help to build those coalitions, not by going around race and poverty, but by going through it and being honest?
Well, I think that's an enormously important question. And in a sense, that's what we've been doing in this campaign. We have been going to parts of the country where Donald Trump won. And we say to those white workers, you think African Americans and immigrants are your enemies? Well, you got it backwards. Why don't you take a look at Wall Street, the drug companies, the insurance companies, and the military-industrial complex. What demagogues always do is try to divide people up so that their anger and their frustration comes out on minorities, people who have no political power. And Reverend, what our campaign is about is exactly the opposite. It is bringing people together and taking on Trump's divisiveness. He wants to divide us up. We have got to come together around a common agenda. Now, you're right. Truth is that percentage-wise, more African Americans and Latinos earn low wages. But numerically speaking, more whites earn low wages. More whites don't have health insurance. More whites can't afford to send their kids to college. So our job is to take on Trump's divisiveness and his racism and his xenophobia and his religious bigotry and bring people together around an agenda that works for all people. And that means that we should not be the only major country on earth that does not guarantee health care to all people. It means that we should not pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs or have more people in jail than any other country on earth. So to answer your question, the way we win and what this campaign is about is waging a political revolution which understands that not only do we have to win this election, but that's not enough. To transform this country, millions of people, black and white and Latino, Native American and Asian American, have got to come together to tell the people who have the power now that that power structure will no longer continue.
Thank you so much, Senator. And one follow-up to that question, because we've tried to work hard in this campaign, and we've seen you and others do it, to say, yes, Trump is the problem, extremist Republicans, but for the last 40, 50 years, we've seen Democrats not even say the word poverty. We've seen Democrats have elections and have primary campaigns and only talk about race when it's cultural, not talk about things like voter suppression and then connect that to the poverty. And so the question we ask every candidate is, in 2016, there were 26 presidential debates in the primary and the general election. 140 million people in poverty, 43.5% of the country. Not one debate was named as a debate to address poverty. We had less voting rights today than we had 50 years ago because of what happened with Shelby. Not one debate was dedicated to systemic racism, starting with voter suppression. We've asked every candidate, will your candidacy push for, and how will you do it, to say to all of the corporate media, we need some debates, at least one, and this is not a black debate, it's an American debate, where we addressed in that debate systemic racism, policy racism, poverty, ecological devastation, militarism as a whole, so that America can see these intersectional injustices and how they are hurting all of us. Will your campaign push for that? Because we need not a forum just in here, but a full televised debate on those issues.
You want a short answer to that question? Yes, of course.
Yes.
All right, and the answer is many people are giving up on politics. A lot of poor people are giving up on politics. Why do they give up on politics? Because they never hear the issues, whether it's systemic racism, whether it's voter suppression, whether it is working for $9 an hour, whether it's not having health care, not having child care. They don't hear those issues being discussed. And I think your point is that we have to bring those issues that make sense, that all the issues, the life and death issues that people face. Let me just mention something. I don't know if anybody here knows this. The disparity in life expectancy in this country between rich and poor is 15 years. If you are wealthy in a community here in Washington, D.C., the likelihood is, on average, you're going to live 15 years longer than if you were living in a low-income community, and that is, by and large, a racial issue as well. How, as a nation, can we tolerate wealthy people living 15 years longer than poor people? Those are the issues that have got to be discussed from a racial perspective, from a moral perspective, and from an economic perspective.
All right, let's throw to the audience. We have Reverend Nancy Petty. Where is Reverend Petty? Oh, there you are.
Thank you. Senator
Clap for her.
Sanders. My name is Nancy Petty. I am the pastor of Pullen Memorial Baptist Church in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is my friend Trish Brown. She's going to quickly introduce herself.
I'm Trish Brown, a community organizer in Tallahassee, Florida. I have long fought for the restoration of voting rights and all other rights that have been withheld from folks who are formerly incarcerated.
Senator Sanders, I hail from a state that has been a laboratory for modern-day racist voter suppression and gerrymandering. I remember in 2016 when the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals struck down a monster voter suppression law in North Carolina, saying that it targeted black voters with, and I quote, almost surgical precision. We know that this is not just happening in North Carolina. We know that all over this country, racialized voter suppression tactics are being used to keep poor people and people of color out of the electoral process and to give power to extremists who then pass policies that hurt poor people. So Trish and I want to know, as president, what will you do to address the systemic policy racism of voter suppression and expand our voting rights?
The Republican governors all over this country who are suppressing the votes are political cowards. They refuse to participate in a free, fair, and open election because they know that if poor people, people of color, and young people are allowed to vote and do vote in large numbers, they will lose. So I say to those cowardly Republican governors what I have said for years. If you are too afraid to participate in free, fair, and open elections, get another job. Now, in addition, in my view, the solution to this issue is not complicated, and this is exactly what I will fight for as President of the United States. If you are 18 years of age in America and you are a citizen of this country, you have the right to vote. End of discussion. All right? And I think also, and I think I am the only candidate who will tell you this, obviously it goes without saying that if somebody has paid his or her debt to society, has spent time in jail and got out, of course those people deserve the right to vote. But let me take it a step further, and I've been criticized widely for saying this, but this is what I believe. If you are a citizen of America, you have the right to vote even if you are in jail. Because voting is not a question of good people or bad people. It's a question of maintaining universal right to vote for all citizens. If you commit a crime, you pay the price. So what we have got to do, understanding that we have one of the lowest voter turnouts on earth for a major country, we have got to make it easier for people to vote, not harder for people to vote.
Really quickly on this same issue, Florida, Senator, the citizens of Florida passed a constitutional amendment to restore voting rights for 1.7 million approximately people. Yes. You can clap for that. That's fine. And your campaign, a lot of your campaign is based on grassroots movements around the country. Will you utilize, your campaign infrastructure to register voters around the country?
So to answer your question, I believe the future of this country rests with defeating Donald Trump. And I believe that the best way to defeat Donald Trump is to register millions of young people, working people, people of color, get people involved in the political process in a way that we have never seen in our lifetimes. We are playing for the future of this country and the world. So if you're asking me, will my campaign be aggressively involved in voter registration, you can bet your last dollar we certainly will.
Okay, Reverend Theo Harris.
So over the last 50 years, the word poor has basically become a four-letter word. And the two responses by most of our politicians is either to pity or punish the poor, if the poor are talked about at all. Can you tell us what your plan is that's comprehensive, fully implementable, immediately, to eradicate poverty, racism, ecological devastation, and militarism?
30 seconds or less. All right, here's what I believe. And we just gave a speech just on this subject a week ago. And what I did is pick up on what Franklin Delano Roosevelt said way back in 1944. You know what he said? He said, you know, we got freedoms in this country. We got freedom of religion. You got freedom of press and all that stuff. And that's good. That's very important. But we have got to go further as a nation. And that means that economic rights are human rights. Got it? Being free does not mean just that you could vote every 2 years. That's important. Being free means that you have a job that pays you a living wage. That's being free. Being free means that when you're sick, you go to the doctor and you don't get bankrupt when you leave the hospital. That's being free. Being free means that you have the right in the year 2019 to get all the education that you need regardless of your income. That's freedom. Freedom means that when you turn on the water faucet in your home, and I was recently in Denmark, South Carolina, Yeah, we got somebody from Denmark. There you are. And I was in the home of a woman. When she turns on the water, it ain't clean. It's not drinkable. And it turns out that there are thousands of homes throughout America in that position. Freedom means that you can and must live in a clean climate. Freedom means that we will end systemic racism in America. Freedom means that if you are undocumented in America, you do not have to live in fear, because we will pass comprehensive immigration reform. So the point is for us to begin to think about what freedom means. And in the richest country in the history of the world, half of the people in our country should not be forced to live paycheck to paycheck. 500,000 Americans should not be forced to sleep out on the streets tonight. Millions of working class parents should not be forced to lack affordable child care for their kids. So what this campaign is about is not only winning the Democratic primary and defeating Donald Trump. This campaign is about transforming this country, about creating a nation in which all of our people have a decent standard of living. Thank you.
Shabar.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. I want to dig a little bit into this because I do believe that we're in a time that's really about the heart and soul of this nation, not just the next election. And I know that the issue of poverty and economics and racism and voting rights go hand in hand. My friend, dear friend of mine, like a brother to me, his name was Charles. I lost my brother Charles to cancer in January. I lost my friend Charlie to the waters of the Hudson River just a few days ago when he was swimming a marathon and had a cardiac event and slipped beneath the waters. He was a PhD, MD PhD, medical doctor. He often marched with us, Senator Sanders, around the issue of systemic racism and gerrymandering and the denial of health care in southern states like North Carolina. He would make several points. One, policies are killing my people, my patients. They're not merely dying. They're literally dying because of policies.
If I can interrupt.
Right.
The estimates are that we lose about 30,000 Americans every year.
That's right.
Because they get to the doctor too late.
That's right. And in our state, the legislature has refused to expand Medicaid for a number of years. 500,000 people a year, 2,800 die every year from lack of access to health care. Here's the question. And he went all over North Carolina with me talking about this to communities. Those, even if we register everybody to vote, and we got to do that, we have a situation in the South where because of gerrymandering, racialized gerrymandering, you can have a majority, a minority group lose, the majority vote for more progressive persons, but because of the stacking, packing, and bleaching of voting districts. So much so that a judge recently said in North Carolina that the racial gerrymandering in our state had produced an unconstitutionally constituted legislature. My question is, where are you on the full restoration of the Voting Rights Act? Where do you stand on making the issue of racialized gerrymandering a national issue that all people understand that racialized gerrymandering doesn't just hurt black people, it hurts everybody, and showing that in the data. In other words, teaching people that because of this racialized voter gerrymandering, that's why you have a legislature that's turning down living wages and health care. And how are you going to come into the South, particularly campaign, and build those coalitions to do that?
Of course, I believe in restoring all of the provisions of the Voting Rights Act. And I think what the Supreme Court did, literally the day after, or a week after that terrible decision was rendered, you had attorneys general all over this country and governors figuring out how they could suppress the vote. So as I said earlier, yeah, we're going to deal with that issue. But our job is to make it clear that anybody in this country who is 18 years of age and is a citizen can vote, and we will not prevent any state in this country from preventing them from voting. And by the way, this takes place in the North as well. In New Hampshire, the Republican governor and legislature last year passed legislation deliberately aimed at young people, keeping them from participating in those elections.
Senator Sanders, I'm going to do what you did to me. Can I interrupt just a second?
You sure can.
And the reason I say that, I understand it is in the North, but I want the nation to hear these stats. If you can control 13 southern states, from Virginia to Texas, by racialized voter suppression and voter suppression, you can control almost 170 electoral votes, 31% of the United States Congress, 26 members of the United States Senate, which means you only need 25 from the other 37 states, and you only need 21% from the other 37 states to control the Congress. And then you control it in legislatures. And then you're able to block. We know it's in the North, but people in this room understand that if we're going to fundamentally change this country, politicians can't try to find a way around the South. They better go through the South and raise those issues.
If I may, I will be in South Carolina within the week, and you watch me talk about this issue specifically. All right, gerrymandering is clearly, like voter suppression, an attempt to undermine democracy and deny a one-person, one-vote situation. And clearly, as you indicate, in the South especially, it is based on race. And we're going to end that. I have a radical idea that we should live in a country of one person, one vote, where majority rules. It's a radical idea, but that is what I believe in. So to answer your question, Reverend, we will end excessive gerrymandering in this country once and for all.
What other states do you plan? Oh, if they're playing music too early. Wait a minute. He still has 46 seconds. What other states in the South are you planning on going to, Senator?
We've been to Georgia. We've been to Alabama. We'll be in Mississippi. We're going to go all over this country. And we are going to do everything we can to get ordinary people, lower income people involved in the political process. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. We have got to stand up to Trump's divisiveness. This is an election not only for ourselves, not only for our children, but for the future of this planet. This is an election that we cannot and will not lose.
That is now
Thank
time
you
to play
all
the music.
very
Okay,
much.
now you can play it. That's
Thank
your
you.
time. Thank you very much.